Graduate students, we have a ton of high school students. These are people who will hopefully grow up and understand how important archaeology is. It's not an abstract thing. It doesn't have to go to Egypt to do it. We have history right here that's really important, right? To get people involved, learn more about Milwaukee County history, the city, because frankly they were coming because of the proximity to the city. They weren't like in the countryside, they were in the outskirts, but the city was the draw, right? So in about September of 2017, well, I guess it would be about June, I emailed like out of nowhere. Actually, no, I walked up to the front desk and I asked this woman whose name was Brooke. I remember that because it was very nature. And I was like, "You guys ever do archaeology here?" She's like, "No, but you should ask Mark White." So I emailed Mark White, the director of conservation, who's been fantastic. And I was like, "Have you guys ever thought about doing archaeology?" And he was like, "We were just talking about that last week." So that must have been a weird kind of, coincidence.
Karma.
They've been really awesome partners. Their ecological restoration and education mission, I think, works really well with archaeology. It was a snake pit. I mean, I don't know. Like, could have been horrible. And we looked at the Walter and Obma farm area, and it's not as obvious where the structures were. There's these like dips in the landscape. If you guys walk that way, you'll see them. But it's not clear exactly what they are. Then we came up this way, and Mark White is great. He's like, "I'll tell you where I'd put my house." And it's right over here. And so as you'll notice, there's this depression right there.
Oh, yeah.
And our first thought was that depression is like the cellar foundation around which the house was built. But then, of course, your photo makes it very clear that the house was probably L-shaped. And that's in the sort of elbow of the L. Anson Buttles and another author in the mid-70s or the early 70s actually wrote about this and said, the foundation of the house, the cellar pit of the house is still visible. There's a giant cedar tree that was in front of the house that's still standing. And lo and behold, an appropriately aged cedar tree was there. And it's in that photo that you guys have.
That's totally awesome.
And when you look at, it's just like, I'm getting chills thinking about it, right? And the other thing I would say is that it appears that the house, at least the one with Bart Deswarte in it, is actually essentially outlined here, and all the cedars are growing in it. So this might have been either an earlier foundation for maybe the Capon house, or it could have been a big root cellar. It's really hard to say what that was, and it's blocked in the photo.
So the front door of the house, in the house photo.
Yeah, do you know where it
would
is?
be where?
Well, if Buttles and company are right, and they're saying that this is in front of the house, the front door would have been, I'm thinking somewhere along the line, along here, or maybe there's a tree next to Bart Deswarte in that photo, a
Yeah.
smaller tree.
Yeah.
Maybe he's actually basically standing in front of the door.
Okay.
And it was
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
sort of
yeah.
short end, but
Right.
we just can't see it.
Okay.
It's hard to say. So Mark White, who knows this landscape really well, because he's been working for a long time and he knows landscape, he's just pointing out, like this pit right here is not an accident. That's not natural. And
This one right here.
Yeah, and talking this depression, and then talking to a couple of colleagues, and Mike, you've worked a lot of upper Midwest archaeology, and Alex, maybe I'm curious what you think, but what's the possibility that's actually the Privy Pit?
Yeah, it's a possibility.
Yeah, but it's awfully close.
Too close? You think too close?
I think.
Yeah.
Close.
Yeah, the house is right there.
Yeah.
Right, and if the door is facing that direction, you would want to go out
Right out the
towards
door.
it, right? Not go around the house.
Oh,
where's
so
the
your
door
privy
come
might be
from?
pointing like your front door, looking at your privy or your back door.
Right.
And would they be inclined to have the front of the house face the barn or the lake or?
I would think to the barn.
Yeah,
just
so
because
you can-
don't want stuff whipping off the
Yeah.
lake.
Huh.
I mean,
Yeah.
Interesting.
cold. On the other hand, well, yeah.
That's what I was trying to figure out. Is are you more interested in keeping an eye on the barn or,
Yeah, I don't
the
know.
beautiful view?
Yeah, I mean,
Back
well,
then they weren't worried about the view, right? They were worried about feeding themselves and.
yeah, I guess so. Although the house is so large, like I mean,
Yeah, it looks
you don't
pretty
get the
big.
impression that they're kind of pioneers in your
Exactly.
one-room hut. If you
Yeah.
so like if you guys been to the Milwaukee Public Museum,
Yeah.
if you go in there, there's like is it like the Juneau House?
Right.
And it's like a one-room log cabin. And when we saw this, I'm like, that might be the cellar under a one-room building. But
I
then
think
the
there
photo
was money
clearly,
in the family because
Yeah.
the father, Peter Bartholomew Deswarte, which
Yeah.
was the father of the 15,
Okay.
Jacob, one of them.
sure,
His will and all his will's papers are on record.
Okay.
and he had some money.
yeah, and it looks like it from the photo of the house. It's got a
Yeah.
nice big brick chimney.
Yeah.
It's 2 floors. It has windows, nice
Right.
fittings, which
Right.
is not a 15 or 20 by 20 house there. Although this could have been cap-ons, and maybe there was a depression there because there was people who lived there before that.
I see. Okay.
we don't know.
Were the cap-ons first before the?
Yeah, the cap-ons were first, and they had a bunch of properties up there too, and they move around a bit. And we've just been calling it the Deswarte.
I think it was
area.
1872
When they bought it.
from the cap.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, I mean,
And then they had it until 1902, I think.
that's what I think as well. Although some maps show that 1892 Eline and Schlitz come in, if I'm
Yeah,
not
I looked at
mistaken.
some of the plat maps.
And those could be wrong too. I mean, that's the thing. It's like a mystery, right? Because
The Mimi Bird stuff says they sold it in 1902.
yeah, that's
There must be some deed or some land records
Yeah, there
that
would
made
be.
her,
yeah.
But anyway,
But,
that's
but I don't know how they do it here, but you don't have to file a deed until you want to. So you can sell the land,
okay.
and you may not file it for a year. I've seen where they've not filed it for 5.
Yeah, that could be.
So, I mean, reading it, the deed itself might provide more insight
Yeah.
into it. But, the other thing is, if they had a chimney, you should find they rarely remove the base of the chimney, so that's somewhere out
Yeah,
there.
right.
Yeah,
I bet.
and so the interesting thing is that these are white cedars, which are like A++ ecological restoration trees. So they really like these cedars. So if we do any excavation in this area, it's going to have to be pretty limited.
Yeah.
We're going to have to be really gentle, because that was one of the parameters when I first approached them. I said, it's really interesting that archaeologists are interested in conservation. So are
Yeah.
ecologists, they talk about it differently. How can we come up with some practices to make this work really well, so all the sort of collective
I
ends
didn't
are met?
realize how long white cedars live.
Yeah, I mean,
I read something like 700 years.
yeah, they can live a long time.
It's crazy.
This one, they said, looks like it's a good 150 years old by its sort of girth there.
Yeah.
Well, because I think that photo of Bart in front of the house is like early 20th century.
Yeah,
It seems-
1910-ish.
Yeah.
Just the style of clothing and how old he would be. I know when he was born,
Yeah,
and he looks like he's in his 30s.
and there's no windows in the house, so it seems like it was here,
yeah,
maybe abandoned.
sitting for a while.
Yeah, which is interesting, thinking that like the Schlitz and Eline family used this for pasturing their horses. They just had an empty house on their property for a while.
It costs money to tear a house down.
It's true. It's true. So that's kind of the gist of it. And so, in terms of archaeology, what I sort of proposed is that we have kind of a sector here, and I just use the property as a sector, as a
Yeah.
cap-on to sort sector, for purposes of locating things, provenance. Then I have subsectors, which are the house, the yard, which is about where that Toro electric cart is, and then the barn. And we started with the barn in part because I thought that there would be midden back there. I thought it makes sense that midden, like a trash pile,
Oh,
trash
yeah,
dump, because
okay.
it makes sense. Like go behind the barn, chuck your crap.
Yeah.
Got a lot of information about stuff.
Yeah.
Talking with Jocelyn Boer, she's like, nah, man, that you'll find work materials back there because they would have been throwing their trash actually quite closer to the house. And actually, Mark White pointed out that, like, if you're living up here and you got this really nice,
This is where,
you throw it down there. So
Yeah.
future seasons of field work might include both this potential area, especially if you could do some more geophysical stuff like metal detection to kind of hone in.
Yeah.
And then I'd like to go around. I like Deborah had a really great quote. She was like, I want someone to dig the privy. I just don't want it to be me. But at this stage of the game, I mean, it would just be organic. So
That's very
that's the
cool.
long and short of it.
Thank you for doing this.
Oh,
This is
no,
incredible.
it's
This is like a
real-
genealogist's dream.
Yeah, well, it's
I
like,
mean-
well, I tell you, it's an archaeologist trained to have a
There's
genealogist.
someone basically who's decided to pick your great-great-grandparents' farm to dig up.
Well,
First of all, it has to be on some protected land,
yeah,
right?
especially
So
around
it
here.
wasn't
right,
developed.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, this is probably a brick, perhaps from the chimney.
Oh yeah, it looks like a brick, doesn't it? Yeah. Sure.
Very cool. Yep. I mean, it's just incredible.
Yeah. Well, it's on the other side. As an archaeologist, you guys collected so much information, and really the photos, I think,
Yeah.
drastically changed our interpretation, and also not just the interpretation of the landscape, but then the sampling strategy.
Right.
Because you're basically sampling blind.
Yes.
Until you see roughly where the barn is. Because
Yeah.
my initial thought, just like here, was that this is the house cellar,
Yeah.
but that's clearly not the case.
Yeah.
I mean, that's underneath the house, right?
Right.
So that's the footprint of the house. It's not the case for the house in the photo. Similarly, that like foundation over there, the barn, we thought that was the whole barn. Clearly, that's not at all the case.
Yeah, it's just part of the barn.
Part of the barn, and you guys might want to check it out because that's all their field over there.
Oh,
And
okay.
there's a nice trail.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You can see it's
Very
very
cool.
different. Very different landscape, and also something that Mark pointed out all the way back in September of 2017 is that the trees, like what's the word I'm looking for? The flora. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm only had tea today, no coffee yet.
You're an archaeologist, not a biologist.
No, they're in the box.
Okay then.
Thank you so much for coming over. So the flora on this side of the Capon Deswarte and Oma Walter property line,
Yeah.
it actually changes. And whether
Okay.
that was something that people in the 1910s used the two fields differently,
Yeah.
we don't know. But I think it's interesting. I think it's
Okay.
sort of multiple lines.
So
of
how does it
evidence.
change? Like what are
Well, that Mark would know better, but you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
see
I'll ask
as you go over there that this field has been kept mowed, and there's different sort of trees
Okay.
on the other side, and
Okay,
that
yeah.
kind of lines up about with the property line, suggesting that the Walters and Obamas might have been using a different kind of strategy on the landscape, might have done different stuff with it, might have left it fallow sooner.
Yeah.
There was something else about that I wanted to bring up, but I can't remember what it is. Well,
very cool? And it was all field and well, a few cedar trees.
yeah,
but
including that one. Which
completely
is,
cleared. I mean, that photo just shows you can see the ridge all the way.
yeah, all the way back
back.
there.
Yep.
Yeah, and they've been restoring it. And so
Yeah.
the restoration project basically uses the surveyor's notes of 1835. So that was
Okay.
before there were any European settlers on the site.
Yeah.
And the surveyors went through and they noted what the flora was, and that's what Mark White and Schlitz Audubon Nature Center are using as their baseline
Okay.
for restoring the landscape. And our pits actually that we're doing, they're going to plant trees in them afterwards that are native trees to the
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
One is a Kentucky coffee tree, and I thought coffee, and they're like, not that kind of coffee. Yeah. And then the other one is a sugar maple.
Yeah.
That's good. That'll be sweet. But so the thing I wanted to point out is when we first came down here, again, they were not. I think they were very honestly unaware of where exactly and who exactly was here. There's a general list of. There's a lot of family names actually associated with this area.
Yeah.
But I'd say like 80% of them seem to be speculators from
Yeah.
the east who bought the
Yeah.
property without ever showing
Pawn
up.
it off on people and
Yeah.
saying it's great soil and
Yeah, and actually what they do is they end up actually defaulting on their taxes a lot because
Yeah.
they buy it at $40, I don't know, and then they're going to sell it at 80 and it's actually worth like 30, and they're
Yeah.
like, why am I going to pay taxes on this?
Yeah.
And they default it, so you get a lot of family name cycling through, which the Audubon
Yeah.
Center knows well about. But we came out here and you can see also this ground cover has a lot of creeping Charlie and daylily and damsel's rocket, which all came with 19th century settlers. So
from the Netherlands, right?
well, from Europe anyway.
Yeah.
And it would have been because they were from the
The
Netherlands.
daylilies were a Northern European thing, right?
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that's really exciting. It goes back to your question, like what do we want to get out of this? And I think one of the things that can be really useful is that when we're walking around our landscapes, it's very easy to just kind of overlook and be like, it's natural. This is just green ground cover under cedars, but actually that ground cover was brought here by somebody, and we actually know who it is. Is Capons, just Swartz, or both,
Yeah.
And now it's all over the place and
Interesting.
angering ecologists, but that's neither here nor there. It's significant.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important.
So if they sold this in 1902,
Yeah.
I know that the father Jacob lived till 1911.
Uh-huh.
And the mother lived to 1917.
Uh-huh.
So they moved, and she's listed as having, in her death certificate, her residence it's called like 579 20th Street, Milwaukee.
Yeah.
And I wondered if she meant Milwaukee or somewhere further up here, but it was a town of Milwaukee, right? The town of
Yeah, there
Milwaukee and
was
the
a town of
city of
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee
Yeah.
was. So
There's
this
still a-
area was still called the town of Milwaukee.
Yeah.
So
The
I thought,
town of
well, maybe they
Milwaukee
mean
still
here.
exists. There's a cemetery.
Yeah,
in the
we were
town.
just and
Yeah.
I've been there, but there's no 20th Street in this
No.
immediate area.
No,
They're
that
not
would be-
numbered.
It would have been
the streets aren't
downtown.
numbered.
I mean,
Yeah.
Well, I
downtown
think
here,
the
no?
numbering system must have changed.
Yeah.
'cause,
Yeah, I don't know.
as
I don't
things
know.
got more organized.
So they got rid of the farm and lived beyond
Yeah.
somewhere around
hung
here.
around.
And we just found the graves.
Oh, right on.
We went to the Union Cemetery.
Oh, sure.
Not the Union Cemetery right by Bayside Shopping Mall.
Yeah.
There's a little Union.
Oh, I know that one. Yeah.
The bigger one, which
Yeah.
is further down.
Further down and
and
west.
we just found the grave.
That's amazing.
And I
Well,
love
that's also good because people have been like, well, what do we find? Bones. And I'm like, I think we know where everybody went.
Yeah.
Who lived here, At least in the European and after.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's great stuff. I mean, I was thinking about the wooden shoes. You saw me the photo. As I
Yes.
was slopping around down here.
Yes. They would have used those shoes. Yeah.
For good reason, man. Well,
I,
anyway.
I guess my great grandpa
Yeah.
sanded down the shoes and varnished them, and that's why they look so like non-used.
So, yeah.
But the story goes that that Jacob,
Yeah.
the father of this, wore them in the Netherlands.
Yeah,
So,
that's amazing.
yeah, and they still exist. And my cousin's kid has them.
Yeah.
And the story that my mom's cousin wrote about the shoes, how they almost got sold in an estate sale, launched a whole debate among my cousins on Facebook, because we got a family Facebook site, about who gets the shoes.
Oh, man, yeah. Well, I mean, this is interesting about the lack of ethnic markers in Midwestern farmsteads, because the things perhaps that were really meaningful and that would have been like ethnic markers, people kept.
Yeah.
That's that,
Yeah.
They didn't toss it out. They left.
Right.
Left with
Yeah.
it,
and gave to their descendants.
Yeah.
Who then are like, who gets
Yeah.
them?
Who gets them?
That's great, man. I
Yeah.
love it. So I want to check back in with these
Yeah.
guys and see what's
Thank
going on
you.
over
Thank
there.
you very much.
Thank you guys.
Unbelievable
Yeah. Are you guys
information.
going to hang around?
We're
You're going to be here
gonna hang for a
tomorrow?
while,
Great.
yeah. We'll be here tomorrow too.
Cool. Very good. I'm really glad to meet you guys.
Nice to meet you. The digs over here are right inside the barn itself. Pretty mucky because it snowed this morning.
So we had no grandparents that we could say, you know what? They're yours. You really wanted them here. They're yours for the next 2 weeks. We'll come back and pick them up. Or aunts.
Oh, I'm okay. Thank you, though.
I'm good, thanks.
Sorry.
Hi.
So, different squares marked off here. And they're continuing to dig tomorrow, which is Saturday, and then also on Sunday. Mostly I found nails so far. A little sieve board here.
Unlike kids, you just can't throw them into the backyard. You can once they get a certain age, but
My daughter, we're gonna go warm up. So we're again at the Schlitz Audubon Nature Center, and this little meadow here is right inside the property line of the original Deswarte farm. The property line was even with Brown Deer Road. So this was a field. And over there about where the tree line is probably the property line. And they're right next to Lake Michigan. This is the mammoth cedar tree, probably the same one in the photo of the house. And apparently these trees live to be 700 or 800 years old, which I didn't know, so even though it's big, it's not huge, but probably quite old.
So I give Riley full. Well, Riley, why don't you tell him? Tell him about that nail.
So this nail here in particular is interesting. It
Which
looks this long, skinny, very pointy guy.
Got it.
If you've ever spent any time around, like in a barn or around horses, it looks almost identical to the nails that a farrier would use to attach horseshoes before they've been used. So after it's nailed in, the head of the nail will be sunken into the horseshoe, and then they'll clip off the pointy end of it once it goes through the hoof wall and kind of file that down a bit. And those, when you find them, will be kind of curved. But this one looks, to me, it looks like a farrier's nail that's never been used.
Too. It hasn't been clipped or anything.
It hasn't been clinched.
And what about the nail there?
It's still pointy.
Yeah. And this one here, it almost looks like it has spiral to it, but they weren't making spiral screws back then, right?
Yeah, it does look like it has it. I think it could be just like
rust,
rust and crud on there. And that actually is interesting because those look like, they kind of look like wire nails to me, which is like the most recent form of nail. And we're kind of deep, but.
Tell me about the button again.
Man, I don't know. It's a button.
It's a button.
It's a button.
It's interesting.
And I know that I'm gonna either show it to my other my historical archaeology friends or pull out the button guide from
Sears Roebuck, 1890.
Sears Roebuck, or I'm sure the Historical Archaeological Society has
cool stuff.
many publications where they just got all the buttons.
I'm sure they do. Yeah, very cool.
Looking pretty close. Maybe this guy.
Maybe that one.
This one?
Right?
I think that looks pretty close.
So 3
Whatever. Maybe it'll not be very accurate with that because the first time they've done it. But like, what's important is that they won't be turned off by having to carry buckets today.
I was a little bit annoyed. But, it was a good experience. Like, it was a fun site. We found some cool flake tools.
Cool.
We have decided our color.
Yeah.
7. It's looking close.
That looks pretty good. This one right here.
Yeah.
So that would be
It's
7.5 YR 3/3, which is
brown.
dark brown. All that to come up with dark brown.
So what does that tell us?
Well, so it doesn't tell us too much in the immediate, except that it does tell us it's a different color than the previous layer, which was reddish brown.
Okay.
3-4.
Yeah, something like that. So
We've entered a new era of time.
yeah. So to be honest, I've never actually really used like Munsell color differences to make a strong argument, but it's good stuff to take. L4 color. So this is 7. How do you know when you stop? You get to sterile, and one way to determine sterile is that you have gone a significant distance in the ground without reaching any, without getting any cultural materials. Another way is to hit bedrock, which is nice. If you hit the bedrock, there's no more digging to be done. But in this area, you would assume that the glacial till would be sterile because essentially there's nobody here before the glaciers. And so one hypothesis, and I think this is a pretty good one, and this is, I was telling Jason that I wish I were a little bit better of a geologist, is can you see this stratum there that has, it's like a line, and you can see it right by that orange ribbon, that it cuts across this way.
Where it goes lighter?
What's that?
Where it gets lighter, you mean?
Yeah, and there's a lot of stones in it.
Yeah.
So I proposed to Jason that was glacial till, and he's like, yeah, that looks like glacial till to me. Could be the ancient lake bed, but that would be earlier than the historic period. So if we start getting stuff like that, then I think we are knowing we're kind of near sterile. So of course, Larry, you're looking up there going, man, that looks about 10 feet higher. So one possibility is, why is that ground higher? Well, all the sublayers could be higher over there, right? And I'm actually starting to wonder if our large stones that we have over there, so you've got one in the southeast corner with another one underneath it, and we've got one in the north kind of center,
Like
just off center.
northeast.
Yeah, northeast. I mean, maybe that's kind of digging into that. Now, of course, they could have dug into this potential glacial till. They could have, been working right on top of it with very limited topsoil. But anyway, I think in terms of interpreting those large stones and making an educated guess about it, like that one right there looks just like the one at the bottom of the unit. It could very well be that the 40-ish centimeters on top of that stone is similar to our 40-ish centimeters. And we might be getting close to essentially that stratum, which I think is glacial till.
Mm-hmm.
Jonah, what do you think?
Makes sense to me.
Sure, you weren't so certain.
Not a lot of nods over there.
I was thinking about other things.
Oh, okay. And by the way, I'm really lucky that Jonah's here, because I think that Jonah thinks about things very in a complimentary way to me, and feels like a kind of perfect.
I was actually
perfect
thinking
check
about
in
the
budget.
future archaeology of that cement thing over there. Like what
You and Mark White,
Oh,
he's
yeah.
really into this.
Sure enough.
And
What's going on over there?
Actually, Mark has gone up and he's noticed there's a number of different kinds of check dams that are in this ravine, and he was kind of interested in doing that. Theory is that that's probably about 1930.